Ever since Sonic the Hedgehog debuted on the Sega Genesis in 1991, the Blue Blur has been a powerhouse when it comes to merchandise. Almost everything imaginable has been made with Sonic's likeness. Balls, pinball machines, Trapper Keepers, pods. Yes, pods. I know, I'm old. And to no one's surprise, action figures. Since Sonic Adventure debuted in 1999 on the Sega Dreamcast, there hasn't really been a shortage of Sonic action figures. That is, if you're solely focused on the characters from the video games. Sonic has had some figures made based on a few shows, a short run for Sonic X, one for Sonic Boom, and as of the recording of this video, Sonic Prime on Netflix. Even the live-action movies have had an action figure line. But what if you wanted figures of characters from the comics or the older shows? Well, Sega, and more specifically, Jakks Pacific, who holds the licensing rights to the Sonic franchise as of this recording, has only been focusing on the characters from the games and nothing else. I'm here today to give my opinion on what characters I believe deserve their own action figure from this well-beloved franchise. Now let me just start off by saying that I'm not an expert on how Sega, or Jakks Pacific for that matter, decide on how they come to the decisions they make as far as how they decide on what characters to make figures of. And I know that there's going to be certain characters that neither company will be able to do anything with or touch for various legal reasons. I'm looking at you, contenders. And my criteria for the characters I've chosen are quite simple. 1. They should have very little to no official merchandise made of that character. And 2. They are characters I think could enhance a collector's Sonic collection. And lastly, this is all just my opinion. So if you think one character or another deserved to be on this list, you're more than welcome to tell me who you think should have made this list in the comments section below this video. And now, with that being said, let's get started with number 10 on our list. First up on the list is, without a doubt, the newest character to be added to the Sonic franchise on this list, Scourge the Tenri. Introduced in issue 46 of IDW's Sonic the Hedgehog comic book, some longtime fans have called her a female version of Scourge from the Archie comics, and the character traits are not hard to see from there. What sets her apart from Scourge is her intense hatred for Sonic and her desire to kill him, versus Scourge just wanted to show Sonic that he's a better version of himself. The two have an intense battle between one another, not just physically, but in terms of their moral beliefs. With Scourge believing Sonic is in the wrong for letting threats to continue to exist without permanently defeating them. Scourge quickly became a fan favorite among some in the Sonic community, and it would be a no-brainer to have her in action figure form. Not only does she have a cool design, but she would easily stand out in someone's Sonic collection. At number 9 is a character I don't hear fans talk about too much anymore. When she was introduced, it was to draw in more girls to the show, despite there already being 2 strong female characters in the form of Princess Sally and Bunny Rabbit. I'm of course talking about Dulcie the Dragon. Introduced in Season 2 of Sonic Sad AM in the episode Game Guide, and in the Archie comics in issue 29, I know Dulcie is a bit of a random choice, but hear me out on this. The line, as of me recording this, currently only has 4 female characters. Amy Rose, Rouge the Bat, Cream the Rabbit, and Blaze the Cat. Adding Dulcie would not only add an additional female character to this line, but she can be done in one of 2 ways. Her original design, as she appeared from Sad AM up until the Super Genesis wave, or her slender, more sleek design after the Super Genesis wave. Either way, she would be a more deluxe and imposing figure for anyone's Sonic collection. She can be large enough to act as a form of transportation for anyone's Sonic figures, and she's a dragon, and who doesn't love dragons? At number 8 is a fan favorite from the Archie comics. But to get to this character, I first have to do some quick background history of him. So skip to the timestamp on the screen if you just want to know straight up who it is. First appearing in issue 11 of the Archie comics, he started off as an alternate universe version of Sonic, one where the roles were the polar opposite. This version, originally called simply either Evil Sonic or Anti-Sonic, led a group of anti-freedom fighters against a good version of Dr. Robotnik. Over the next few years, this version of Sonic would make random appearances throughout the Archie comics run. And starting in issue 160, the first issue where Ian Flynn took over the run, in issue 161, after an attempt to steal the Master Emerald with the help of Rouge the Bat, he used the energy of the Emerald to intentionally become stronger than Sonic. But after Locke punched Anti-Sonic while absorbing Chaos energy from the Emerald, it changed his overall appearance. Before, he was visually indistinctive from Sonic. And now, he was very visually distinctive from Sonic. After this change, he makes a statement of, Evil Sonic, Anti-Sonic, the new hotness is a real Scourge. Which brings us to our number 8 pick, Scourge the Hedgehog. Scourge is a very memorable character from the Archie run of the Sonic the Hedgehog comic books, so much so that after IDW picked up the licensing rights, even though Scourge couldn't be brought back, his personality and general appearance inspired another character for IDW, that being Scourge the Tenri. And what's my reason for picking Scourge, you may ask? Aside from the fact that it's another Hedgehog character, in all technicalities, if you count his original anti-/evil Sonic design, he is the first Hedgehog rival Sonic has to contend with, and he predates Shadow by an easy 7 years, 1994 versus 2001, cementing him as the first Hedgehog rival Sonic has to contend with in the franchise's history. Not to mention, he'd be a visually striking looking figure. Coming in at number 7 is another character that has something in common with the previous entry on our list. This one started off as a Ken Penders character, but really shined when Ian Flynn took over. I'm of course talking about another fan favorite from the Archie comics, Fiona Fox. First appearing in issues 28 and 29 in a story that would lead Tails to his own 3-part miniseries in the Archie comics. Fiona would appear in 3 issues of the Knuckles comic series, which helped to explain where she was in Sonic's story. Speaking of Sonic, she wouldn't appear in the mainline comics until issue 134. That's right, just pages before the infamous slap. By issue 155, it appeared she and Sonic were dating, which didn't last too long as by issue 160, Ian Flynn took over the series and changed some of the characters around, including Fiona Fox. I could dive into the long history about the character, but that's not what this video is about. Long story short, she went from being a potential love interest from one character to another, and from one event after the other, went from being a good character to her infamous portrayal as a female antagonist for our main heroes. Fiona makes this list as she was the first original female character for the Archie comics, and her background history as a Sonic character has managed to net her own following within the Sonic community. She's a unique character in her own right, and would make for another interesting female character for a line that's sorely lacking in female characters. Not to mention, who doesn't like a bad girl every now and then? Coming in at number 6 is a character that first started off in Sad AM, but found his home in the Archie comics. While he was only shown in 2 episodes, both of which were in Season 2, he'd make substantial appearances in the Archie comics up until the Super Genesis wave, becoming one of the main antagonists for Sonic and his friends outside of Dr. Eggman. I'm of course talking about the wizard, It's His Nagus. Having a unique design and being one of only a handful of wizards to be depicted in the Archie comics, the only one in the Saturday morning cartoon, while he was shown to be a somewhat large character in Sad AM, in the Archie comics, however, he was shown to be a large, powerful, and towering individual. He became the primary antagonist for Sonic and his friends after Dr. Robotnik's defeat in issue 50, leading him to be the main antagonist for the better part of a year, before Sonic Adventure came out and that version of Dr. Robotnik, or Dr. Eggman, whichever you prefer, would come to dominate the rest of the comics run. He'd make a couple more appearances throughout the Archie comics, his biggest role coming towards the beginning of the final quarter of the comics run, when he'd overthrow alias Acorn and rule as king for some time with Jeffrey St. John as his apprentice. It's His Nagus makes this list as he's one of only a handful of characters that started off barely making an appearance in one of the cartoons, Sad AM in this case, to be featured prominently and have his character expanded upon, not to mention the first original antagonist after Robotnik that Sonic has to contend with. Not only would he make for a unique and interesting deluxe-sized figure, design-wise, but he would also make for another cool, classic antagonist to decide alongside your other villains. Coming in at number 5 is another entry from the world of the IDW comics. First appearing in issue 8, she was first spoken of by none other than Silver, almost as though she was a legend. That is, until this mysterious figure kept bailing him and Sonic out of trouble inside of one of Dr. Eggman's bases. The pair came across her and she is forced to retreat. Only when Sonic apologizes and her whiffs come to Sonic does she appear before him. If you haven't guessed it by now, I'm talking about Whisper the Wolf. Definitely fitting the strong and silent type, Whisper makes for another female character that would make for an amazing addition to a Sonic collection. Unlike any of the previous entries on this list, Whisper does actually have physical licensed merchandise in the form of a stuffed plushie. I already know that some fans out there are saying at their computer screen or their device, "But Shane, you can't have Whisper without Tangle." Don't worry, as she would be in my honorable mentions later on in the video. But aside from her cool design and her history in the IDW comic, Whisper would make for an excellent addition to the Sonic action figure lineup. At number 4 is a character I don't think most people would say needs a figure. Well, I'm here to disagree with that. Despite being in Sad AM and having 2 half-hour episodes dedicated to him, I much prefer his interpretation from the Archie comics better. In Sad AM, he was essentially, imagine if you will, the Meg Griffin of the show, serving as a punching bag for Sonic, a character to mock. While his Archie Comics counterpart started off the same way, He quickly turned into a deep, well-developed character that's distinctly different from his cartoon counterpart, other than his appearance and his first name. I'm of course referring to Antoine DEET. Starting off as a joke character, one that's intended to be an outdated French stereotype, in the comics, it's shown after a while that he's capable of being a brave and formidable combatant. Wearing the uniform of a royal guard, his uniform not only looked sharp on him, but also set him apart from any other character in both the show and the Archie comics. Not only would he be a very visually striking looking figure, but he would make for a very unique character in the lineup. Not to mention, I'm sure Antoine himself would say,
"Ah, merci beaucoup."
At number 3 is one that any old school fan of the franchise would be familiar with. As with any main antagonist, they need to have an army of loyal minions to do their dirty work. No, not those minions. No, not at all. Since the beginning of the game franchise, Robotnik, or Eggman if you prefer, had a loyal army that did his bidding, called Badniks. But these were all animals trapped in mechanical bodies, essentially acting like living batteries for the machines. But I'm not talking about them in this case. Some of the Badniks already get action figures, and they're in the 2.5-inch scale line. I'm talking about what is probably the best known and most intimidating of Robotnik's minions, and that's the SWAT bots. Featured heavily in Sonic SatAM and for the first few years of the Archie comics run, these acted as Robotnik's loyal soldiers, enforcing his will and capturing any Mobians they discovered so they could be roboticized. Think of these guys as the Sonic universe equivalent to the Imperial Stormtroopers from Star Wars, as they are literal cannon fodder for our heroes to destroy. And Robotnik has a literal army of them. Not only would adding these guys add a new enemy type to the Sonic lineup, but it would give fans a chance, just like with the Badniks, to build an army of these guys, and would really spice up the Sonic collection. And who wouldn't want an army of these guys being led by the big round guy himself? At number 2, we have Dr. Robotnik. I know what you're thinking right now. Right now, you're saying, a shame. He already gets action figures made as Dr. Eggman. That violates one of your rules.
You are technically correct. The best kind of correct.
But in this case, the version of Robotnik I'm talking about is the one I consider to be truly intimidating. The Dr. Robotnik from SatAM. Vastly different, not only in terms of appearance and design, but in his overall attitude and just how downright cold and cruel this incarnation can truly be. Not only was he the star antagonist for the Saturday morning cartoon, but he was also the Robotnik depicted in the Archie comics up until issue 50. He would make random appearances throughout the rest of the comics run, but where he started off as a comic relief villain in the beginning, he ended up becoming a truly terrifying and intimidating individual in the comics. Larger than the rest of the cast, he made for an impressive deluxe-sized figure with added articulation and additional accessories. He could be released one of 2 ways. One is a standalone figure with a couple of accessories, and the other being a more deluxe collector-oriented edition, where the following could be added. His robotic pet Cluck, who only appears in season 1 of the show and early on in the Archie comics. His lackey Snively, a few alternate pairs of hands, a laser rifle, and possibly a stealth orb with a transparent display stand. And if the SWAT boss before him were to be made, he could be displayed alongside them, leading them into battle. Now, you can't have number 2 here without our pick for number 1. Now, before we get to our number 1, here are our honorable mentions.
Speeds by Sonic the Hedgehog, too fast for the naked eye. Sonic the Hedgehog, Sonic, he can really move. Sonic, he's got an attitude.
Coming in at number 1. If you follow this channel for any length of time, you have an idea who I'm about to say. If you know me as a person, you know who I'm going to say. And if you have any knowledge of the Sonic franchise, you can probably guess who I'm about to say right here. While Sonic Sat AM has Sonic in it, he's not necessarily the most important character in the story. And the exact same thing can be said in Archie's run of the Sonic comics, as this is more about her than it is about Sonic. She has had her own loyal fan base since the beginning, and even has her own hashtag on Twitter, or X, whichever you want to call it. The character I'm talking about here is none other than Sonic's original love interest, at least here in the United States, Princess Sally Acorn. Now, let me just go ahead and say that I'm not making her number 1 just because she's my favorite character, but because she is a highly popular character within the fanbase as well. Appearing in one form or another from 1993 to 2017 in the Archie comics. She even appeared as an Easter egg in the IDW Sonic Forces digital comic, Looming Shadow. Now, unlike the vast majority of those on this list, Sally did have some merchandise. In the US, it was more or less limited to comic books, and even a few pods. The best that she received being a very rare and difficult to find Avon fingered bath puppet. However, if you were lucky enough to live in Sydney, Australia in the late 90s to 2000, then you're likely familiar with Sega World Sydney. Not only was Sally one of the mascots there, but she had actual physical merchandise ranging from cups up to and including plushies and even a bendy action figure. Yeah, all of those go for insane amounts nowadays. Now, as much as I'd love to include all of the Knothole Freedom Fighters in the number 1 slot, I can't do that. However, if I had to pick only one, it's not even a contest. It would be Sally Acorn. Not only do the fans want her back in the franchise, but they want her back in physical form as well. And a series of 2.5-inch and 4-inch action figures would certainly fit the bill. Fans are willing to purchase 3D printed figurines and parts to customize their own Sally Acorn action figures. And if you were to ask me, both Sega and Jakks Pacific would be fools to not make merch of her, as there is a financial pool that they could dip into and make a substantial killing off of. Not only is she one of the most important characters in the franchise's history, but the fans would be just eternally grateful just to have her back. Thank you for listening to me rambling like a lunatic about what Sonic characters I'd like to see Jakks Pacific make. If you liked this video, be sure to like and leave a comment. Share this video with other Sonic fans. And until next time, let's do it to it.